All right, you're thinking about that next project,
Yeah.
what you're gonna build, you're thinking through the tools you have, and then the steps or processes to get that thing moving.
You know, and it tends to go like this, right? When you think about your next project, what you want to build, what you want to do, and you think about what material you have, it always starts big, right? It comes in 4x8 sheets, and then you start stepping it down, right?
Typically, you rarely start with a 4x8 sheet. You're starting with something smaller. So the first step is getting it smaller.
Yes.
Now, you got bandsaw, so you can hold a big sheet and try to cut it through. If it's too thick, you really can't put it in a kick shear. You know, you can do a cutoff wheel, but I mean, you could be there for hours.
Hours, man. I've used a cutoff wheel to cut off a quarter panel before, and it seemed like an eternity, right?
For sure.
Or you could throw fire at it. Now here's the old school method. Acetylene torches. Of course, this takes some adjustment, some tuning. You got the gas, you got the oxygen, you add it and tune up your tip. And actually, it's kind of an ugly cut, right? There's a lot of slag that goes in there, a lot of debris and so forth in the cut, and it takes a little while, as you'll see.
You can do some decent stuff, but now you got fire in your hand. You can't really set the torch down, adjust your materials, you know, so you can go through and make a decent cut, but we've made some progress, because right now I've got to have 2 tanks.
Right.
And I've got to make sure that during shop hours, I can get them filled, and I always have them ready. But what's nice about stepping into something like a plasma cutter is you're using shop air.
Right, compressed air. And most people in their garage and their shops have compressed air. Now the only problem about compressed air is with that compressed air comes a little bit of moisture. And you'll find out if you spend about 75, 85 bucks on a filter like this, you'll save your plasma cutter. You'll cut the downtime in it in half, right? You'll save
your
its life.
disposables, you'll make them last a lot longer, maybe double the life of them.
Yeah. So you get compressed air, you plug it right in here, you have your dryer so you don't have any of that moisture, and the cuts on this thing become a lot cleaner and a lot nicer. Now what's really nice about a machine like this, man, you just get close to it, fire it off.
What's great about a machine like this from Miller is a 40 amp, 220 volt, so it's got plenty of amperage to cut some pretty thick material up to 5/8. But it also has a real smart feature. It's got different pigtails for the ends, so I can plug it into a 110 or a 220. So this thing will cycle, you know, basically give me the output of whatever I have. So if I'm on a job site and I can only get a 110, or if I'm in my shop I got 220, I'm not going to get shortchanged anywhere.
And you saw, at about the time you grouted that 4 or 5 inch slice with the torches, I was able to cut this entire piece with the plasma cutter. All right, now let's get in here and show you what makes these things just so cool. This is an actual drag tip. Now you see that by these channels that are on here. This allows some of that debris to come shooting and get blown out as you come across. All right, now in here, you'll see the diffuser. Oh, okay. Get this guy off. You'll see that diffuser, and that's gonna swirl that gas, that compressed air, and allow it to light off, right? And that's what's gonna heat up, blow through this metal. The rest of the gas uses it and just blows it right out of the way. So a lot of guys, depending on who you ask, will tell you you could actually drag this tip or keep it about a 1/16 of an inch off. That's where something like this comes in really handy. This cool little tool, check that out. So now,
it's like a little wheelie cut.
Yeah, man. You can make cuts, follow different patterns and so forth.
Yeah, if you have the drag tip, you can drag it across the surface. But a lot of times you'll have just that inside part, something that looks like this.
Right.
And if you drag that guy too much, you'll wear it out prematurely. Not the end of the world, you put new tips in. But if you can hold it that little bit of gap, you'll make it last a little longer. But it sure is easy to do the drag style.
Yeah, it is. Now while we're at it, we'll show you a couple easy ways to make some nice, smooth cuts.
All right, you want to start with a thin metal?
Yeah.
All right, let me turn you down real quick. Now over here you can see there's not a lot of controls. I got a knob. I've got a few little idiot lights here in case something over temps or if something's wrong with my cup or I don't have the right shop pressure. But I can just come over here and turn my amperage down to whatever material thickness I've got, and I'll put you down here pretty thin, and you're all set. That's how easy it is to operate.
Now I'll show you a pretty standard cut, okay? You want to be perpendicular right off the edge, 90 degrees, let it spark off, and just drag it. And just like that, you got a nice clean cut.
Magic, man.
Yeah,
so
fire.
Cool. Now this machine right here, this is the Extreme, the 625 model from Miller. It'll go up to 5/8 inches of steel working like all day long. And you can cut even thicker with a little bit of patience and a little bit of craftiness.
Yeah, and you think of a tiny machine, look how small that is. And 5/8 of an inch is some boss material to cut through.
So we got about 1/4 inch here, and I'm gonna show you again like how easy it is, you know, using the same technique. Here's some thicker plate. Right, and show you a couple of these tips here.
Now the first thing we're gonna do is what's called a pierce delay. You wanna set in about 45 degrees, set your tip down, and then spark it, and then turn it right up and watch it dig right through the metal.
Yeah, go ahead and lean it up a little bit more. Now what you're doing is, you're not always gonna start on the edge. There you go. So you get that first hole started, stand her kind of straight up again, and you can do a squat, you can cut out a pattern, you can make a hole. So really good way to start, especially in the thicker metals, which is cool. Now another thing you can do is called gouging. So here's like a frame bracket, maybe it's on the side of your car frame, your truck frame. And a lot of times you want to remove them because you're making changes. So you can actually gouge or just kind of blow away the weld. Now it takes a little bit of practice and skill. So maybe a side on the side, maybe the bracket that you're not going to keep. Now you can use the same technique if you want to make sort of a gouge or a groove in a thicker piece of metal, just as you would to kind of blow off the weld on this bracket. All right, dude, see how simple that is. Now, we've got a good start on some of the tips and techniques on how to begin a project. When we come back, you can check out the rest of our goodies that we got from CyberWeld. I'm going to show you guys some 101.
Hey, welcome back. And like we promised, we broke out the TIG welder we picked up from CyberWeld. And what a machine it is. We'll get into that in just a second. But let's walk through some TIG 101 steps, if you will.
Yeah, now if you haven't been around one for a while, I've never seen really a TIG setup. We'll go through real quick. You've got a ground here. And once I push my pedal, I'm going to strike an arc right at the end of this tungsten to my base metal, form that loop. And that's going to create all the heat, essentially the fire, to melt my metal. Well, then I've got to come back with a filler rod, depending on what you're welding, steel, stainless steel, aluminum, you name it. Now, as soon as I depress my pedal and I strike an arc between my tungsten and the base table, creating my electrical loop, I can start melting that metal really quickly, but I've got to fill it with my filler rod. So depending on what you're welding, whether it's steel or aluminum and the thickness, you pick your filler rod and you can start dropping beads down and make that nice stack of dimes, that real pretty weld you're used to seeing with a TIG welder.
Man. There is a certain rhythm you develop with filling it in and the throttle and so forth.
And that just takes practice, so that's all right.
Okay, let me show you something else. What a lot of guys will do is sharpen the tungsten improperly, all right? So one thing you want to do is get a grinding wheel designated just for the tungsten, okay? And I like to sharpen mine when the wheel comes down this way. You get a nice uniform edge around it, and you get something like this as opposed to sideways. Now what happens if you sharpen it sideways is you get this wandering in the arc, all right? Kind of like a fish swimming. So
it's real simple. Once you've got that tip prepped and you've got it inserted in your TIG welder, you're actually ready to go. But we'll give you a couple more details. We got different colors. So the red is typically for DC or for steel. Now you used to do green for aluminum, which was pure tungsten. But we've kind of gotten away from that, especially with the newer welders that we'll show you. Now we've got cerium. So 2% cerium is the gray. And what's nice about that is you can use it for steel, DC, or AC aluminum. Awesome. So it's really nice. You can almost have one type of tungsten lying around and the different sizes for the different thicknesses.
Right. You got different cups that shield the gas, different tips and so forth. And like we said on this guy, you got yourself a wireless pedal. So pretty cool machine, man. Why don't you get in there and tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so we kind of alluded some of the new technology. One is this Dynasty 200 series from Miller. Now this thing is awesome. I bought one a couple of years ago. It's the most amazing machine I've ever owned. It'll do AC or DC, so aluminum or steel, but look at the size of it. This is a cooler. This is separate. This is to cool the torch. The welder is only this big, but this is a 200 amp unit. You used to have a welder this big. So think about the portability or just the size it's going to take up in your shop. But it's all because of the inverter technology. So this is the new stuff, and again, over and off 110 or 220, whatever you've got available, it automatically reads it. but the controls that you get, and we'll walk into a little bit of it on the aluminum, is unbelievable. So you can just set it pretty much on kind of your auto standards and you can get moving. Right. But as you get better and better, and you start to really watch what the arc is doing and how your weld is forming, you can come over here and you can change, you know, pulsing, frequency, balance, you name it, to get your weld cleaner, smoother, tighter, whatever you want. This machine can do it with just the flick of a dial. So why don't we get some metal out here? Why don't we strike some arcs? Yeah. Start burning some stuff. All right, welcome back. No pressure on Willie here, but we got him set up on the TIG welder and we got steel. So we set ourselves on DC and we're ready to rock.
Yeah, and when it comes to TIG welding, man, it is a little intimidating at first. You're not gonna be laying down perfect beads initially, but you can gain momentum and skill really fast. Now, a couple things to remember is you wanna have your handle here about 70 to 80 degrees at most, right? And a lot of guys will find if they come straight up, they'll get a nice arc. Steel is a lot slower than aluminum when it reacts, so you could actually keep this guy on there for a second before it starts pulling and bubbling up. Whereas aluminum, as you know, it's a little more volatile when you throw that arc at it.
All right, now Willie's gonna be working that pedal to control the amount of heat that he puts in it.
Right, and there's that one bead I was telling you about. And you come down here, you start getting a little rhythm to it. Start forcing it in a little better.
So the nice thing about having that throttle control is, like we talked about earlier, you don't have a cold, proud bead and you don't have a flat, wet bead. You can really work the heat that you put in it, and when you're adding the metal, so you can shape it, you can get the penetration you want. And steel's a great place to start. It's real simple. You can string some stringers, they're really small and tight. And the next step up from that is hitting the aluminum.
All right, we have our Miller Dynasty 200 set up, and Kez about to tackle the shiny material.
Yeah, aluminum. That's a little more intimidating for some reason than steel. I tend to like it a lot, and I think just a little bit of practice, you get a good, comfortable feel for it, and you can lay some pretty wicked beads. Now I'm gonna show you some easy stuff. Now, you've got a pedal over here, and you can, you can move it up and down, you can pulse it, and you can put a lot of amperage in. But to start off, why don't you just try to be consistent and make slow movements just to increase or decrease heat if your puddle's getting a little bit too wet or not. So I'm gonna lay one down where I'm just dropping rod and I'm trying to keep the arc pretty consistent. You can see what that looks like. Now as you can see, I'm just holding my pedal pretty consistent and I'm just adding rod right to that puddle, dropping in a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, but everything's staying pretty consistent on the amperage. All right, so pretty cool.
Not bad.
That's the kind of look you get, and depending on how fast you're dropping your rod in, you can space these out a little bit more. Right. So that's gonna be maybe your easiest route. You're not trying to pat your head, rub your belly all at one time. Just get the pedal down, just get your motion down, drop a few beads in there, try not to booger it up.
Right, a good rule of thumb is ABC, always be comfortable.
That's right. Now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pulse this one so you can see kind of the different look. Now you can see the light changing here. I'm adding and I'm taking away amperage and heat, so I can just put each bead down one at a time and put them exactly where I want them. All right.
You can actually hear that when you're pulsing it.
Yeah, and it's, it's kind of how the look. You can pretty much drop those dimes down, and let's say my hand is getting uncomfortable, I can back off the amperage, I can move my hand position a little bit, then I can get back in it with the heat and the rod, so maybe I can turn a corner, go around a component. But either one of those is purely acceptable, but get yourself started with some scrap, burn a lot of material, have some fun with it. And don't worry about boogering anything up, it's just practice, it's just fun. Go out there and kick it hard.